Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about some makeup products that were released throughout 2023 and that for one reason or another I had some doubts about at the beginning. So I postponed buying all of these products until very recently, and I have been pleased to find out that they all have worked out quite well for me. So I thought that I would do a quick video showing you a 10-minute or so makeup look using all of these products and discussing my experiences with them. So first, a little bit of information about me. I'm 59 years old and I have dry and sensitive skin with some wrinkles and other signs of aging. And over the past 3 years, I've tried more than 1,000 makeup products, and so I have a pretty good basis of comparison for everything that I try. I have found that certain ingredients do irritate my skin, and that these are ingredients that are known to be irritating to many other people's skin as well, so I don't talk about any products with those ingredients on this channel. Now, the first product that I'm going to talk about is called Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Serum Skin Tint, and this was released in the summer. So Danessa Myricks is a makeup artist who is pretty well known and who has worked with a variety of celebrities and also with a variety of makeup companies. And she started her own company in 2015, and it has been in Sephora since 2021. She also has a makeup university online where you can go in and learn how to do makeup. And when I have read things that she has said, it seems that she is mostly interested in inclusivity and also using products in innovative ways. And I haven't seen very much at all from her line focusing on ingredients or clean beauty or anything like that. So I have been a little bit hesitant to try out those products. I spent a lot of time looking at the ingredient lists, and most of them do include ingredients that are on the list of products that I try to avoid. In addition, these products are made in China, and although I'm sure that there are some products that are being made in China that are perfectly fine and that there are some factories there that are good, in some cases companies have reported that they have ordered products from China and they haven't gotten the ingredients that they had anticipated, or that there were other problems with contamination or things like that. So I am not necessarily unwilling to try any products from China, but it does make me feel a little bit doubtful. When I looked at the ingredient list for this, the thing that concerned me was the fact that it had propylene glycol in it. That is something that causes irritation and that I feel has probably been responsible for causing my own skin irritation. So EWG says that propylene glycol is a small organic alcohol commonly used as a skin conditioning agent. It has been associated with irritant and allergic contact dermatitis as well as contact urticaria in humans. These sensitization effects can be manifested at propylene glycol concentrations of as low as 2%. So that is not forbidden in quote-unquote clean beauty as it's defined by Sephora or by Credo, but it's certainly something that I feel a little bit concerned about. So as the year went on, I started to think maybe I should try this product because I did see a few reviews of it that were really, really good. So for instance, there's one reviewer on YouTube named Sophia Sees Beauty, and I follow her fairly closely, and I usually agree with her about most things, and she thought that this was one of her favorite foundations of the whole year. And when I look at the Sephora reviews, even of the ones that are just non-incentivized, they are really, really good also. So I thought that it was worth giving it a try, and I was really happy and surprised to find out that this really has not irritated my skin at all, and that I seem to be doing perfectly fine with it. So I'm not saying that other people who have sensitive skin will be able to tolerate this, but at least it has worked for me, so I thought I would share that information with you because my skin does react to an awfully lot of foundations that are out there. So this foundation is a silicone-based foundation, and it has a number of ingredients in it that are good for the skin. It has squalane, which is moisturizing, and sodium hyaluronate, which is hydrating and plumping, and some ceramides. It also says that it has phytosterols, which are supposed to reduce irritation. And the first ingredient after water is glycerin. So again, that is a hydrating ingredient that keeps water in the skin. And it does have one ingredient in it that is a PEG, and that alone would keep it from being sold at Credo, but I have not necessarily found that all products with PEGs in them are problematic for me, so that's not necessarily a disqualifier as far as I'm concerned. So silicone foundations have pros and cons. The pros of the silicone foundations, I think, especially for people who are getting older and have wrinkles or other texture issues on their skin, is that silicone-based foundations are much less likely to make wrinkles and other texture issues look worse. And if I want my skin to look particularly nice for a particular occasion, then most of the time I will choose a silicone-based foundation. Now, on the downside, silicone foundations, in my opinion, have the ability to trap dirt and oil and bacteria and fungus and dead skin cells underneath them because they generally provide a pretty tight barrier on the skin. And so what I have found is that I can kind of get away with using a silicone-based foundation on occasion, especially if I make sure that I take it all off. But if I start to use it on a regular basis, then my skin does seem to do more poorly. But I do have really good skin, and so I can get away with not using foundations that have a lot of silicone in them and using only a very light layer of them because I don't necessarily need that much coverage. So what I usually do is use a cream concealer or a cream foundation on a spot basis, and then sometimes, or more often than not, I will use a light foundation without any silicones in it to give my skin a little bit better texture. It also is the case that silicones are not very good for the environment, so that is another reason not to use them. But I do think that if people really want coverage and they do have wrinkles on their skin, then the upsides of silicone might, in a lot of cases, be worth the disadvantages. Now, this foundation is available in 16 shades, and I have shade number 2. I do think that this foundation line tends to be geared more towards people with darker skin, and that there aren't all that many foundation shades available for people with lighter skin. The color that I chose is labeled as a fair neutral, and usually when I choose a foundation shade, it's usually one that's labeled as light rather than fair. But I do think that this one has worked okay for me. The foundation color match does not seem to have been an issue at all. So when I compare this to other silicone-based foundations, I do think that it's a little bit more on the thick side, and that some of the other products that I have especially liked do tend to be very, very thin, and to provide some coverage with only a very thin layer of product on the skin. So the ones that I tend to like the most, I do like the Haus Labs one, I like the Lisa Eldridge one, I have kind of like the Chantecaille, I think it's called Future Skin, something like that, foundation. And then there's also one by Pat McGrath that I have liked. And so all of those seem to be going on my skin and providing a very thin layer. Now this one seems to be quite a bit thicker, and so getting a really, really thin layer on my skin hasn't been as easy. But I do think that it looks nice even so, and I think that especially it's providing a lot of really good benefits to the skin in terms of skincare ingredients. And my skin actually does feel quite good when I'm wearing this, even if I wear it all day. And even though this is labeled as a light foundation, I think that it gives as much coverage as those other foundations that I just mentioned. And they are more saying that they're medium coverage or buildable medium coverage, but I think that you can do that with this foundation as well, which is why I tried putting on a thicker layer. And I do think that even when I build it up to a fairly high level of coverage, that it is not emphasizing my wrinkles. I don't see it emphasizing my pores. I don't see it being patchy, and I think that it has been wearing really, really well. So if I put it on in the morning, I don't really see any difference at all by the end of the day. Now, of course, my skin is not very oily, and it does hold up pretty well no matter what kind of foundation I'm using. But I think that this one, compared to other foundations that I've been using, it does hold up quite nicely on my skin. So if I compare this to the last foundation that I reviewed, which was the Youthforia foundation, that is also one that has some good good skincare ingredients in it, but that one does not have silicones in it. So if I put a light layer on it, and I had to put a light layer on it by thinning it down with some moisturizer, then I think it was very pretty and very good for my skin. But if I put a heavier amount on, like putting it on right out of the bottle, then it certainly settled into my wrinkles, it certainly settled into my pores, it looked kind of patchy, like in the areas around my nose, because it doesn't have the silicones in it. And there are some silicone foundations that I have a hard time getting off. In this case, I do think that this foundation came off fairly easily when I used either my Pharmacy Cleansing Balm or my Lisa Eldridge Cleansing Balm, so I was happy about that. So in general, this really surprised me. I really expected not to be able to use this product at all, but it really did not irritate my skin. My skin seems fine in it. I have used it at least half a dozen times, and I think it's worked really well for me. And I think that if you're really looking for coverage and you're looking for a foundation that will give you that coverage without emphasizing texture issues, then this could be one to consider. And it's really not quite as expensive as some of the other foundations that I think do the same sorts of things, so that could be another reason to consider it. And now let's move on to brows. And when I want my brows to look nice, which is most of the time if I have enough time, then what I always do is to use a brow pencil first, and then I put down some tinted brow gel over it. And the reason for that is because my brows tend to be very sparse and they tend to be very light. So if I just use an eyebrow pencil, then it looks kind of fake. But if I just use a brow gel, there's really not enough hairs there to actually give me a decent look. But if I use both of them, then I get something that's at least starting to approach a normal brow. So the new brow pencil that I have been using is from Ilia, and it came out maybe in the summer of this past year. I often use for my brows a brow pencil with a really narrow tip. So for instance, the Pioneer in this one was the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz. I also use the Jane Iredale Precision Pencil a lot, and I've been very happy with that one. So this one seems to me very, very similar to the Jane Iredale one, and I think that it has been working really well for me. It is available in 8 shades, so there's a pretty good range. I chose the taupe shade, and I think that that is a pretty good shade for me. I definitely don't want my eyebrows to look too warm or too reddish, because when that happens, they tend to kind of clash with my hair. But I think that this one has worked really well for me, and I've used it quite a bit over the past couple weeks, and it has not broken, and it's been in good shape. And then several months ago, Jones Road released a brow gel, and brow gels have been a really hard category for me. Many of them have arrived dried up, many of them have irritated my eyebrows, and many of them just have not worked for one reason or another and kind of made a big mess. And this one has been one of the ones that has worked very, very well for me. It's quite different than other brow gels that I have used because the brush is a lot bigger. And if you look at this one, some of these bristles, they're very tall, and the formula is considerably thicker. So when I use this product, I find that it does a very, very good job of taking even the tiniest little peach fuzz hairs that I have and coating it with this brow gel and making it look like a real hair. So when I use this, I do feel like my brows automatically get quite a bit thicker looking than they usually do. And I think that this is probably purposeful. You know, Jones Road is really designed as their primary audience of women who are getting older. And in a lot of cases, they are like me, where their brows do get very light and very sparse. And so being able to make the most of every single brow that you have is a really good thing. I haven't found this to be irritating at all. And I've used it quite a bit, and it still seems to be holding up fine. And I do think that the shade is good for me. This is a shade called Ash. So I am really pleased with this. Now the next product that I'm going to talk about is the Haus Labs Concealer. And this was released, I think, in the fall of 2023. And my experience is that water-based concealers that come in a tube with a little doe foot, that these on my face really don't work very well. And that almost always they exacerbate the look of my wrinkles and texture issues in general. And there really haven't been very many exceptions to that. I seem to do much better if I use a concealer stick or a foundation stick or a little pot concealer. So that is what I almost always do. But I have found that there are some liquid concealers that you use with a doe foot that have worked really, really well for me as an eye primer. So there aren't that many eye primers on the market that don't have really problematic ingredients in them. And the ones that are on the market, a lot of them are clear, and I feel like I have a lot of discoloration on my lids, and that it's really better for me to start off with a clean slate before I put eyeshadow on. And I think it's also the case that it's really important for me with some eyeshadows to put on a primer to kind of protect my eyes from the colors or other ingredients in the shadows. So I do have really sensitive eyelids, and so that does limit me in terms of the kinds of eyeshadows that I can use, but I have found that if I do use a good primer on my eyelids, that allows me to use a few more eyeshadows that otherwise might have been bothersome to me. So I decided to try this Haus Labs concealer out. It worked really terribly on my face in terms of exacerbating my wrinkles. I would say it worked considerably worse than average for that, but I do think it's worked well for me as a eyelid primer. It hasn't irritated my eyelids at all, so I've been really happy with that. It's pretty thick and a little bit like tackier than a lot of the concealers that I have used, but I haven't found that's necessarily a problematic thing when it comes to using it as an eyelid primer. And that after I put this on and then let it dry a little bit, then I can put the eyeshadow on, and it blends really easily and it stays in place quite well. So I have been really happy with that. And you can look and see how my eyeshadow today is holding up. I think it's holding up very nicely. And that's usually the case when I have used this particular product on my eyelids. So I think that I will continue to use this at least until I finish off the tube, and then I will reassess and see if there's other ones that I think might be better or that I want to try. So I think even when I put on the Danessa Myricks foundation in a thin layer, that it provided quite a bit of coverage, but I did touch up a little bit more with a concealer. So what I have here is from Mob Beauty. This is their foundation, which I'm really just use as a concealer. And I have two shades. I have one that is called P30, which is a pinker shade, and then I have one that is called N20, which is a more neutral shade, and it's a little bit lighter. So at one point I had someone from MAC tell me that if I used a concealer under my eyes that was more pink than my usual shade, that would serve as a color corrector, and I think that that's been a good idea. And so that's why I have this shade that's a little bit darker and a little bit pinker, so I can use that under my eyes. And then on the rest of my face, I use the neutral shade. And I try to just go over and find areas that I think really are looking like they're not perfectly even and just fix them with that. I don't think that this is really my favorite cream concealer or my favorite cream foundation, but I do think that it's worked very, very well, and I think it's really convenient to have these two different shades in this little palette here so that I can use both of them when I fix up my face. I think that the main issue with this foundation is that it really needs to have a little bit of powder over it in order to set it. So there are some products like the Tom Ford stick or the Merit stick that I feel don't need to be set at all. This one does need to be set, but I do think it looks very nice. I don't think it emphasizes my wrinkles at all. I've talked about that a few other times on this channel, and I never mind talking about Mob Beauty because I think that they're doing really great stuff. Now I also put on to set my foundation stick this powder from Lawless, and this was released I think in the spring, and it's available in 7 shades I think. Yes, I have the shade Light. This powder is something that I've just started trying again. I actually got this in the spring and it arrived all smashed, and I waited until I could get this on sale, and so I've just been using it recently. I think it's an okay powder. It kind of is a little more velvety than most of the powders that I'm using, and I think that it's worked okay so far with the foundations that I've tried it with or the concealers that I've tried it with. I think that I still am maybe liking the Kosas powder better, and I also really like the Laura Mercier Real Flawless Talc-Free pressed powder that has a little tiny bit of shimmer in it. I really, really like that one quite a lot. But I think this one's been performing well for me. It takes me a while to decide what I think of a powder because I need to use it on with a variety of different foundations and different conditions and different weather. I do think it's performing pretty well for me and that it does have some potential. So this is the Pat McGrath bronzer, and this is another product that I was really hesitant to try because it has talc in it and also because really seems to be a limited number of shades, particularly for people with light skin. If you have darker skin, you might have a little bit more success with it. But I do think that I have really the only shade that might work for me. That is called, I think the name is Naked Desire. And I think that this shade has been okay for me, but there are a lot of bronzers that have shades that I think have worked better for me. So I think this bronzer is fine. I don't think that it is better than other bronzers that I have tried. I have also liked the Haus Labs bronzer, and I have liked the NARS bronzer a lot. They have a new talc-free bronzer, and I like the Jones Road one. That one's quite different. Most of their shades are really on the pinkish or reddish side. So it's sort of, in my mind, most of the shades are more like a blushy bronzer, but I like that one also. And I think I might, continue to use this one a little bit, but it hasn't been the bronzer that I have been liking the most. But on the other hand, I got it at a really good sale, and you might be able to get it at a really good discount as well. There's a lot of things that are on sale from Pat McGrath at present. Now, a new product that I haven't really seen anyone talk about at all is from Goop, and this is called the Colorblur Glow Balm, and it is obviously Gwyneth Paltrow's company, so maybe that's part of the problem. A lot of people are very skeptical about her at this point, but I have found that these are actually really, really nice. Now, a lot of people seem to think that these were going to be very similar to the Jones Road Miracle Balms, but that turns out not to be the case. And this is actually a product that's much more dry than the Miracle Balms are. The Miracle Balms tend to be very tacky and sticky to the point that if you put it on your skin, that it's like your hair can stick to it. And they also have a lot of essential oils in them, of different kinds of essential oils, and so they tend to be quite irritating for my face. So I really can't wear them myself at all. Whereas this does not have any scent at all. It's much drier. It goes on really, I think, very, very pretty. And it's really easy to put on, and I have really, really liked it. The shades that I have are Whiskey, which is sort of a terracotta that's almost like a bronzer blush. And then I also have one that's called Slipper, which is more of a peach and a little bit brighter. And I have found that, many blushes disappear really, really fast on my skin. I would not say that this one is as good as, say, the Honest blushes. Those are very, very good in terms of staying on my face and not disappearing. But I do think these, as blushes go, these are at least in the top 50% or top 25% in terms of how well they stay on my face. And you get quite a lot of it. Now, this is not real pigmented. And in my view, that's not a bad thing because I don't really like a blush that's really dramatic. I want something that seems like it's much more realistic and not something that I'm pretending to have, really unnaturally bright cheeks. And I think that this does this for me very, very well. So I think it's a little bit unfortunate that basically no one knows about these yet, but I would suggest maybe considering them because I do think that they are a quite nice product. So Natasha Denona right now is a super hot company, especially when it comes to eyeshadows. And what I have done is taken a good look at all of the recent palettes to see what ingredients they have in them. They do all have some talc in them, and that's not necessarily something that concerns me a lot. I think that the real concern with talc is that it could be contaminated with asbestos, and if that's the case, then you don't want to be breathing it in. So I think that most of the cases where people have had bad experiences with talc and where it's been at least posited that illness has resulted wanted is when people are using baby powder on a daily basis and then making a big cloud of it in their bathroom and then breathing that in. When it comes to eyeshadows, at least for me, I use them very, very delicately, and the ones that I use tend to be quite high-end, and so they don't generally have a lot of fallout. So I'm less concerned about the talc, but I am concerned about a couple of other ingredients that can be in eyeshadows, including aluminum powder and Teflon. So Teflon, I think that for most of the high-end eyeshadows that are sold in places like Sephora, the older palettes may have Teflon in them, and that is the case with Pat McGrath, and that's also the case with Natasha Denona. So there are some palettes that were released by those companies maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago that do still have Teflon in them. So I definitely would not want to use those. And when I have used products with Teflon in them, my eyes have responded really dramatically. So I do feel like I'm not just avoiding this based on a theory, that there's a very good reason for me to avoid that. The other thing that these eyeshadows sometimes have in them is aluminum powder. And that is another ingredient that EWG thinks is particularly problematic, and I do believe that my eyes do react to that particularly strongly. So for Natasha Denona, all of the large eyeshadow palettes that she has released so far do have at least a few shades with aluminum powder in it. So that includes the I Need a Nude palette. Now the good thing about Natasha Denona's palettes is that you can mix and match the shades, you can reorganize them, you can remove them, you can put in shades from other palettes for the larger palettes. And so my feeling with the I Need a Nude is that finally I broke down and got that one because it's so heavily considered to be the release of the year. And so there are 3 shades in there, 2 or 3 shades that have aluminum powder. And so I'm just going to move those over to the side so that I don't use those. But I think that the rest of them all look really pretty, and that it might be worth it for me just to try it out because it is such a big release. Now there are a few of her smaller palettes that don't have aluminum powder in them, and these little mini ones. So she has some that are 5 pan minis, and then this one has 3 pan minis. And I reviewed the mini Starlet palette a few months ago, and I really, really liked that one. So I decided that I would get this one, and I also am waiting to receive her new palette, which I think is called My Mini Dream. And that one is sort of like the I Need a Nude palette, but with just 5 shades. And none of these 3 palettes have any aluminum powder in them, and so I feel a little more confident using them. Now this palette, I did use it on my eyes without any primer on it, just to see what it would be like, and I do feel that it was just a teeny tiny little bit annoying. I think that when there's artificial colors and things, that can also serve to irritate my eyes just a little tiny bit, usually, depending on how much pigment there is. But when I put on the Haus Labs concealer on my eyelids, and this has not irritated my eyes at all. It's been feeling perfectly fine to me. And obviously this is a more warm color story, and what I usually do is use this lighter shade over my entire eyelid, and then I use the darker shade more on the outer corners. And then I use just a little bit of the middle glimmer shade just to add a little bit of interest value to the look. And that is usually how people suggest that women who are getting older and have hooded eyes might want to use eyeshadow. And that's really all that I ever do. I usually only use like 3 shadows, no matter how big of a palette I'm using. The formula has been really, really excellent, and I feel like it's been really easy to go on. It really blends really easily, and the color selections have worked for me. So I feel very enthusiastic about this. I have seen almost no one talk about this little palette. It came out at about the same time as I Need a Nude, and everyone talked about the I Need a Nude palette. But this is a nice, inexpensive palette, and it's still available, at least at the time of this shooting, and I have been really happy with it personally. And then in terms of mascara, I decided to try out a new mascara from Victoria Beckham, which is called Vast Lash. Now, Victoria Beckham already had a mascara out that was called Future Lash, I think, and it came in a glass container. And that one was is a tubing mascara, And I have tried that, and I do think it performs really well, but it was somewhat irritating to my eyes. And so I have not used it more than a couple of times for that reason. And so when I heard about this mascara, my guess was that because of the name, that it was not going to be a tubing mascara and that it was going to be more conventional and that it was going to be a mascara that I was not going to really enjoy. As it turns out, this is not officially called a tubing mascara, but it does have many characteristics of a tubing mascara. So I think that it goes on much more easily than many mascaras. It's not like I need to get out a spoolie and separate my eyelashes. I do find that it sometimes makes a little tiny bit of a mess that I have to clean up with my fingers, but compared to most conventional mascaras, it's really minor, and it generally goes on very nicely. And it does also wash off with warm water, so that makes it similar to a tubing mascara. And some of the ingredients in it look like tubing mascara ingredients to me. So I think that the reason that they're saying this is not a tubing mascara is because when you rinse it off, that the pieces come off in little tiny chunks rather than in long tubes that look like eyelashes. So they don't probably want to say it's a tubing mascara because then people will expect those tubes and then be mad when they don't see them. But in terms of the benefits of tubing mascaras, I do think that this is pretty much the same in terms of it giving a lash look that's fairly natural looking and that performs really easily and that comes off easily. Now, I do think that my lashes are a little bit more thick with this one than with some of the other mascaras that I use. Often I use, for instance, the Colorblur mascara or the Merit mascara. And I think that my lashes are looking a little bit thicker than usual, but it certainly was not difficult at all to create a fairly natural and attractive look. And I haven't found this particular mascara to irritate my eyes at all. I think that the other one has a glycerol B-enate in it, and that one is known to be irritating, and so I think that that could have been the issue for me with that one. But this one seems to be perfectly fine, and it's been holding up pretty well, so I've been able to wear it outside, and when I'm hiking, and if my eyes are watering, it still seems to be holding up fine. Now, this is one of the more expensive mascaras that I have purchased. It's not as expensive as the Westman Atelier mascara, so that is at least something, but $32 is more money than I want to spend on a mascara. And the reason is because at one point I did get an eye infection from using a mascara that I had only had for 4 or 5 months. And so I have decided that with using natural mascaras without a lot of preservatives in them, that it's probably good to only use the mascara for a month or two. And so therefore I think it's probably best for me to stick with mini mascaras when I can. And I think that the Colorblur mini mascara is nice. I think that the Ilia Limitless Lash Mascara, that one comes in a mini, and that one's been okay. And so I think it's better for me to stick with those or with mascaras that I happen to be testing out. So I don't know that I'll be buying this one again, but I do like it a lot, and I am really happy I can tolerate it. And so now I think this is the most fun product from this video and the one that I am the most excited about of anything that I've used for quite a long time. And these are the Isamaya Lips collection lip balms. And then there's also a lipstick. But this is a lip collection that was released, I guess, in the spring, and it got a whole lot of controversy, and some people were actually kind of offended because these lipsticks were only available in a metal container that was shaped like male genitalia. And it cost $95. So I wouldn't necessarily not use a product because of that kind of container, but I certainly am not going to spend $95 for a lipstick just to get a fancy art-shaped container. And so I am really, really happy now that these lipsticks are available in just plain metal tubes that I think are actually quite nice and quite attractive. So if you have ever used the RMS lip balms, and they're very, very similar to that. It does have a tiny little drawing of the male organ on here, but I don't think that that's something that I ever notice unless I'm looking for it. But it does have a lid on it. You don't need to buy the other case in order to use it. And it is available in 6 new shades. And then there were additional 2 lip balms, and then there is a bright red lipstick. And I was really surprised when I looked at the ingredient list for these, that the ingredient list looked really, really good to me, because most of the other Isamaya products do have problematic ingredients in them. But these turned out to have a very good ingredient list, and they really feel good, they taste good, and I think that they perform really, really well. So I'll put a little bit more of this on. You know, I think that these are just a little bit sticky, but not too sticky. So they stay in place really well. And I think that this one, which is called Retrograde, is a really pretty color. And I think it's a little bit giving me kind of Black Honey Clinique vibes, but I think this is such a better formula. And I have really, really liked this. So I think that as lip balms go, this is one of my favorite formulas now. And I feel really happy about it, and I'm so happy that these are available. I am thinking that I'm going to do, my next video is going to be on the entire line of these Isamaya Lips products. So I have the red lipstick now, and I also really like that, so I will show you that and compare that to some of the other red lipsticks that I have. But in general, I really hope that they continue on with this line, because I think the formula is really, really good, and I would like to see them make more of their regular lipsticks in other shades. But so far, no one seems to know that these are out there, and they've been out for about a month. So I am feeling really enthusiastic about them. So hopefully more people will find out about them and start talking about them, because I'm really pleased. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video. And if there are any new releases that you thought were particularly good this year, then I hope you will let me know what those are in the comments section, so that I can include them in my end of the year wrap up video. And in addition, I am getting close to 1,000 subscribers. And when that happens, then I will get a little bit of money from YouTube for my videos. So I'm very excited about that. So if you haven't subscribed yet, then I hope you will go ahead and do that. And Coco and I love you very much, and hope that you are having a good holiday week. Bye-bye. Ba-da-ba-da-da-bum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.